Have you ever had a coaching client who's just stuck in this emotional loop? Their anxiety won't shift, their overwhelm just keeps on cycling, or maybe they're feeling anger that they just can't seem to move through. You're doing everything you've been trained to do in your coach training. You're exploring it with them, helping them to reframe it, asking them about the story they're telling themselves, trying to shift their perspective, and yet nothing's changing. They're still stuck. They're still spinning in the same patterns. So here's what's happening. You're trying to work with emotions cognitively. You're talking about the emotions, but you're missing a vital piece because you're not working with them in the body. So my name's Andre Duckman. I've been working as an osteopath since 2001 and as a therapist using nervous system regulation techniques since 2010. I've worked with trauma, chronic stress, all kinds of health issues across more than 4,000 individual clients. And I've also been coaching executives for more than 10 years and have run more than 2,500 one-to-one coaching sessions. And what I've learned over the past 25 years and tens of thousands of sessions is this. Emotions manifest as physical sensations in your body, going way beyond simple mental experiences of the emotions. And the most effective way to work with them, well, you need to combine somatic awareness with cognitive processing, using both top-down and bottom-up methods to be the most effective in your coaching approach. So let me give you an example to show you what I mean. A few years ago, a client called Sean came to see me. He was completely collapsed, a real slump posture. He found it really difficult to make eye contact with me. And emotionally, he was just overwhelmed. He was stuck in this anxiety spiral about his work performance and also feeling like he was failing to be present for his young family. He'd tried loads of different approaches, reading self-help books, trying new productivity strategies, even trying to reframe his thoughts in a thing that he'd learned from one of the books he was reading, and yet nothing was working. And the thing is, he wasn't bottling up his emotions as many men do. He was actually doing the opposite. He was brooding over them. He was obsessing over them. He couldn't stop thinking about them. His emotions had completely taken over. Now, this is part 3 of the series on the embodied performance system that I teach to executive coaches. We're looking at the feeling system and why the cornerstone of open up requires us to work with our emotions through the body as well as cognitively. Because if you're only processing emotions cognitively, you're missing half the picture. So let me explain a little bit more. So the feeling system I refer to as the emotional system that takes information from both directions, up and down, and gives us a feel for what's going on. From the bottom up, when your survival system gets triggered and fight, flight, or freeze comes online, your feelings will align with that. Maybe you'll feel anger or fear, or maybe even numbness. But when the survival system is calm, your feelings will be calm too. You'll feel more connection, more peace and ease. And then from the top down, your thoughts, whether they're positive or negative, will trigger a felt sense of these. What you think affects how you feel, obviously. And here's something really important. The feeling system relates massively to previous life events. Our feelings are very personal to us. They're related to our past experiences. So a similar event for two people will have completely different emotional outcomes. Now, this is true for each system, but it's particularly relevant here with emotions. We don't need to go digging into the past to work with this. We just need to acknowledge that how we experience emotions right now in the present moment is shaped by our history. And here's what the new neuroscience is telling us. And this is really interesting. Emotions aren't found as these fixed fingerprints in specific parts of the brain like we used to think. It's not just the amygdala lighting up. Emotions are more like collections of stimuli based on our own past experiences, and then the feedback that we're getting from these other two systems, the survival system and the thinking system. So let's make a note here. All of these two systems are concepts, of course. They're not actually separate systems. This is more about giving us a conceptual framework to understand what's happening and then to help work with our clients much more effectively. In reality, all of these systems work together back and forth in a dynamic interplay, minute after minute, hour after hour. So when we use our ability to connect to felt sense awareness, we can tap into our emotions at a body level, and then we can start to give them a sense of geography. So what do I mean by this? Well, anxiety shows up as tingling or butterflies in my stomach. Maybe I'll feel twitchy or jumpy. Anger might show up for you as heart racing or breathing harder, tension in your jaw and chest. Despair and depression might show up as someone feeling heavy or lifeless, maybe collapsed. You see, emotions have a physical location in the body. They're sensations you can actually feel, locate, and work with. And that's what we talk about when we're talking about the feeling system. So when Sean sat down with me, I could see it straight away. He had a collapsed posture. He wasn't making eye contact with me. He was completely hooked on his emotions. And like I said, he wasn't bottling up his emotions. He was doing the opposite. He was brooding over them constantly. He was obsessing about his anxiety, obsessing about his performance at work. his sense that he was failing as a father. His emotions were running the show. So when someone's hooked like this, we say that they're fusing with the emotions. They say things like, I am so anxious, I'm overwhelmed, I am failing. The emotion becomes their identity, and then they can't separate themselves from it. And when you're fused with an emotion like this, it's almost impossible to work with. You just get swept away by it. And here's what happens when we get hooked on emotions. We end up taking action that moves us away from where we want to go. So Sean would snap at his kids because he was so overwhelmed. He'd avoid difficult conversations at work because the anxiety was too much. He'd even withdraw from his wife because he felt like he was failing. All of these are actions that take you away from where you want to be heading. And all of these behaviours were taking him further away from his own values, being a present father, being effective at work, being connected to his family. But this is what happens when you get hooked. So we needed to help Sean get to a different place, a place where he had some control over his emotional experience, where he could choose more powerful, values-aligned action. And to do that, we needed to work with his emotions both cognitively and somatically. So this is why we use both top-down and bottom-up approaches throughout the embodied performance system that I teach to coaches. And the cornerstone that we refer to when we talk about the feeling system is open up. But what does that actually mean? Well, it means neither bottling our emotions up, but not getting overwhelmed and brooding over them either. It's the middle path. It's about opening up to what's really going on for you emotionally, being aware of the emotion without being consumed by it, making space for it without letting it run the show. And as I said, you can work with emotions from two directions. From the top down, this is cognitive processing. We're using the thinking system to name and notice emotions. We're using diffusion techniques from psychological flexibility frameworks such as acceptance and commitment therapy. This is where you shift from I am anxious to I notice this, that I'm experiencing anxiety. You're creating separation between you and the emotion. You're observing it rather than being it. And then from the bottom up, this is somatic processing. We're using body scanning, feeling into the felt sense of what this emotion actually feels like in your body. And this is where you locate the emotion physically. So I said to Sean, where do you feel this anxiety? And he told me it was in his chest. His breathing had gone shallow. His stomach was tight. Now, of course, both approaches work. Talking tools help process emotions. Somatic practices help process emotions. But when you use both together, when you can name and notice the emotion cognitively and locate and feel it somatically, that's when real transformation happens. So that's the work we started off with Sean. We immediately started with grounding. Now, Sean was about -3 on the scale when he first came in my -5 to +5 scale, which we talked about in the first video. He wasn't as dysregulated as Katie was in those first videos, but he was still overwhelmed enough that we needed some nervous system regulation tools first. So we used survival system tools, breath work, grounding, getting him present enough that we could actually work with his emotions. Once he had some regulation, we could move to the feeling system. So using bottom-up techniques first, I said, Sean, where do you feel this anxiety in your body right now? He noticed it in his chest. He noticed that his breathing had gone shallow and his stomach was knotted. And then what are you feeling as you experience these physical sensations? A sense of being overwhelmed, he said, but also a fear of failure. And what actually happens as you work with emotions in this way is that your clients will start to build an emotional vocabulary. And you'll hear clients say, actually, maybe this isn't anxiety I'm feeling now, but actually I feel more that I'm scared of losing everything. And that was what Sean had said. So then we moved to top down. I said, okay, Sean, I hear you're saying that you're afraid. So let's give that fear some distance. Can you say instead that you're noticing the feeling of being afraid? And this shift from I am afraid to I notice I'm afraid allowed Sean to create a space between himself and the emotion. And this shift from I am afraid to I notice that I'm being afraid, that's diffusion. It allowed Sean to create space between himself and his emotion. And then I said to him, can you make space for this fear? Can you allow it to be there without trying to push it away or without letting it completely consume you? And this is the skills of open up, neither bottling up emotions nor brooding over them, just allowing them space. So we did this work again and again, helping him to locate emotions in his body, then helping him to name them and notice them, giving them some space. And over about 3 or 4 sessions, something really shifted for Sean. He began to notice his emotions in his body much more regularly, and then he could start to name them. And this became a superpower for him. He could recognize his emotional spirals before they took over. He had tools he could use. We gave him some grounding to give him somatic space, some thinking tools to create that cognitive separation. And he improved dramatically over those first couple of months. He was more present with his family, more effective at work, and he finally had some agency over his emotional experience. And that's what our cornerstone of Open Up makes possible. As I said, Sean had tried loads of things before: self-help, different books, different strategies. All of them were top-down approaches. All of them were working with the emotions via the thinking system, and might have helped a little bit, but it didn't work completely because emotions are felt in the body as much as awareness in the mind. So when you only work with emotions cognitively, when you're talking about them and analysing them and trying to reframe them, you're missing the fact that emotions are physical experiences in your body. You can reframe your anxiety all day long. You can tell yourself different stories about it. But if you're not working with that tightness in your chest or the shallow breathing, then the emotion stays stuck in your body. And if you're not in a calm and grounded state within your survival system, emotions become very difficult to work with. So this is why cognitive-only emotional work often will fall short. You really need to add the somatic piece to the work you're doing. You need to be able to calm your nervous system for your clients before locating the emotion physically. Allow them to feel it, make space for it in their bodies. And you need the cognitive piece. You need to name it and notice it, help them diffuse from it. Talking strategies work and somatic tools work. And that's why this approach is so powerful. We use both, top down and bottom up. Survival, feeling and thinking systems, deeply connected and working in harmony. And that's integration. So how do you know when the feeling system is the right entry point? Well, generally once someone's in the -2 to 0 range on the scale, emotions are a great choice to work with. Below -3, when someone's completely dysregulated, like Katie was in the first video, crying, hyper-emotional, exhausted and numb, they need serious nervous system regulation first. You just can't work with emotions effectively when the survival system is running the show. The client's window of tolerance is just too narrow. Their nervous system has become too overwhelmed. But once there's some regulation, once someone's further up the scale, -2, -1, emotional work becomes very accessible. You'll see this in how they show up. They might still be struggling emotionally, but they're not completely collapsed. They've got some capacity, some ability to reflect, and some space to work. Trust your coaching instinct. If a client's stuck in an emotional loop, if they're brooding or bottling or can't seem to move through their feelings, then the feeling system is their entry point. And again, a quick refresh on the tools we use: top down, naming and noticing emotions, helping your client shift from I am overwhelmed to I notice I'm experiencing overwhelm. Create separation. Observe the emotion rather than being consumed by it. And then bottom up, body scanning, feeling into the felt sense of the emotion. Grounding practices. Where do you feel that anxiety in your body? What does it feel like? Is it heavy or tight? Is it hot or cold? Does it have a color? Is it old or new? Help your client locate the emotion physically and then give it geography. Make it concrete. And here's the key: you can use one approach or the other, or both. If a client's maybe more cognitively oriented, maybe start top down. Help them name and notice that emotion first. But if a client's more somatically aware, by all means start bottom up. Help them locate the feeling in their body. But ideally, you'd use both, because when you combine cognitive awareness with somatic awareness, you're working with the whole emotional experience. And that's when real transformation happens. That's when clients can open up to their emotions instead of being hooked by them. So once again, here's why the feeling system is essential. When clients can work with their emotions, when they can notice them, locate them, and make space for them, they stop being controlled by them. They move from brooding and obsessing to observing and choosing. They move from taking action that takes them away from their goals to powerful, values-aligned action. And that's what happened to Sean. Sean went from being completely hooked by anxiety and overwhelm to having agency over his emotional experience. He could recognize the emotional spiral now before it took over. And he had tools, both somatic and cognitive, to work with his emotions instead of being swept away by them. And that changed everything for him. He became so much more present with his family. He became so much more effective at work. And his sense of himself as a capable person just grew and grew, which saw some real shifts in himself and his ability to manage his work and family life. And so that's what Open Up, that cornerstone I'm talking about, through the feeling system makes possible. Once you can be present in your body through the survival system, remember the cornerstone for the survival system is be present. And then once you can open up to your emotions through the feeling system, then you can access a highly regulated thinking system, which will guide you towards taking powerful, values-aligned action, which will help you move towards your goals. Because when emotions are running the show, it's impossible to think clearly. It's impossible to access your values. It's impossible to make powerful decisions. But once you can open up to your emotions, then the thinking system becomes easier to work with. And that's where we're going next. In the next video, we're going to look at the thinking system and with it, the cornerstone of do what matters. This is where values clarity happens, where committed action becomes possible, and where peak performance takes place. But it only works when the survival system is regulated, where you're being present and the feeling system is open. Without that foundation, cognitive tools fall flat. But with that foundation, everything becomes possible. So that's next. The thinking system and do what matters. I look forward to seeing you there.